This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for coming back and listening more. I see people binge listen to the show, and I appreciate that. All is well over here in Massachusetts as of right now. I know I gave a little bit of a update, or I told you what was going on with my dog Cash. He's a 125-pound German Shepherd. He got his kidney removed last week. It was a financial burden and a tough decision, but we ended up making it work, and he's been recovering great. He seems fine. And then we got a call from the vet, and they're like, yeah, there's one last test we should really do because it did come back as cancerous, the growth. And we should know what kind of cancer it is because there's one cancer that's really bad. And we're like, when you feel like you're out of the woods and then they come at you with one more thing. So we're like, all right, how much is a test? It's like, $250, but we've already come this far. So we're like, because she said basically if it's one of the mild cancers and they got the whole kidney, then probably could live a pretty normal life and probably will be fine. If it's this aggressive cancer that sometimes occurs in German Shepherds, then it doesn't matter because of how aggressive it is. It's already there. They just couldn't see it. And he'll probably have like 30 days to 3 months regardless. And they say if you get chemo for the dog, which we would never do, but if you get chemo, it can extend it to 6 months. So we didn't really know about this aggressive form, and now we do. So we're waiting on those results now. So I want to thank people who reached out. A lot of fans of the show reached out to give support and a kind message. And some of you even sent money to go towards the vet bill, which is really amazing. And I really, really appreciate it. It's really touching to see that come in with a little note for the Cash Man. So I appreciate that, guys. It was really, really cool. But today, let me switch gears here. I don't want to talk too much about the dog. Let me switch gears here because we have a great show, a great guest today. So I met this guest probably 4 or 5 years ago. I met him through the great Ken Roybal, who hosts the Police Applicant podcast. He, I think, was talking with Ken about getting hired, and at the time was working at the Oklahoma National Memorial Museum. He was a lieutenant there and was looking to transition into police work. He's been a fan of the show. I've interacted with him a bunch, spoken with him. Really great guy. He got that cop job about 2.5 years ago. He's a deputy sheriff in Oklahoma, and he also did 6 years in the Army National Guard as field artillery. So he finally decided, and I think we said back in the day, I said, well, once you get some years under your belt, you got to come on the show. So I'm going to bring him on, the great William James Long. William.
Oh, Steve, where's Ken? I thought this was the Police Applicant podcast. I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah,
no,
I tell everybody
it's
that.
It's great to be here. How are you doing?
It's good, man. It's good to have you. I'm so glad that you were one of many success stories I met through Ken, where you did the work, you had the perfect background for the job, and here you are, a deputy sheriff. So congrats, brother.
No, I appreciate it. And no telling how many people you guys don't know in person that you guys have actually also helped get into law enforcement or pushed or interested someone in the field of policing. So thank you guys more than anything.
Oh, thanks for saying that, man. Yeah, it feels good. I always say that. That's the best note I get, where someone's like, I'm in the academy, or they send me a picture of them at graduation with their wife or girlfriend. I'm like, yes, that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, I remember you and I were, I think, texting not too long. Well, actually, it was probably 2 years ago. We were texting a little bit, and you were saying when you started as a deputy sheriff in Oklahoma, you started at the courts. Is that right?
So it's kind of per agency. At my agency, pretty much everybody starts in the jail. Some people get stuck there for years. I was blessed. I only had to do about maybe a month in the jail, and then I got moved onto the courthouse, kind of out of the proverbial basement of the sheriff's office, to the courthouse, and then depending on time schedules and availability of FTOs, that depends on when you're going to go to FTO. And just because you go to FTO doesn't mean you're going to patrol. For instance, I went to FTO. I did, I don't know, probably about 4 months out on patrol. I had kind of a weird FTO cycle. A little bit of personal information. Uh, my wife decided to divorce me right in the middle of FTO, so I actually had to
Oh,
take a break and handle that business. Um, and I went back to the courthouse for a while, and then I went back and finished my FTO. But actually now, I've heard you mention a couple times I'm out on patrol. I'm not. I am still at the courthouse. Um, I'll get into a little bit more about why I'm still at the courthouse later. But at this point, it's of my choosing. And I'll talk a little bit more about why later on. So you go to either the courthouse or court transport, and then kind of from there, courthouse is a direct line into patrol. Court transport, you usually go to like extraditions or something like that. So that's how it works.
so interesting in the southern states or the Midwestern states. And we mentioned before in the show, the sheriffs have like so much more encompassing duties from not just the jails. They do patrol. Like in Massachusetts, we have state court officers. They're employed by the state, and they wear like white shirts, and they run the security. And there's a chief there, and they have a lockup, for the prisoners you bring in. But they are not armed. They have pepper spray and handcuffs, and it blows my mind. And it's not a bad job. Like, it pays well. It's an important job. But they don't have, excuse me, wrong tube. They don't have guns. And things happen in courthouses. People freak out. Scumbags show up to courthouses every day. So to me, it's like,
Well,
I just don't get it.
it's funny you mentioned that. Our only active shooter incident within, at least as far as the sheriff's office go, where it didn't involve another municipality or something, was at the courthouse. We had a guy out on the plaza who pulled out a gun, and he engaged about three of our deputies, and they got into a big gunfight. And that's the only one we've had, and it was at the courthouse. So I think after that, that kind of solidified the fact of, hey, we need certified deputies there that have guns.
Yeah, dude. Courthouses are a pressure cooker. Every time I go there, there's somebody crying in the parking lot. There's some G'd out thug. You know what I mean? It just collects all that emotion, and people are pissed or happy or whatever. But yeah, it's not a place to screw around. So I don't understand. I mean, Mass is a weird state, anyways. I don't know why they run it like that. But and then of course our sheriffs don't. They don't really patrol. They just do the jails, which is like another, like, it all goes back to like old colonial laws and stuff of constables and sheriffs and police.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I've been spending some time. I'm actually in Texas right now. I've been spending some time down here a lot lately, and I've been seeing a lot of weird agencies rolling around. I'll see, whatever county constable, whatever county marshal service, and finally I stopped a guy I saw in uniform, and I asked him. I said, what do all these different agencies do? And at least down here in Texas, it seems like they take their sheriff's office and they split it into three different agencies. So you have like the sheriff's office, which manages the jails and the courthouses. You have the marshals, which do like patrol and field work. And then you have the constables, which are like civil guys, and they go out and serve papers and things like that. For us, that's all us. That's all our agency. We do all those things. So it's just state dependent. It's real bizarre.
It is weird. It's interesting. Every state's so different. Now, I have a question for you. My buddy was in a bar in Texas, and he witnessed a near fist fight between an Oklahoma man and a Texas man. Now, I had no idea, being from where I'm from, that anybody from Oklahoma and Texas wouldn't get along because of state rivalry. I had no idea. But
he's pretty heated. So you have. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the argument was, it almost came to fists when the guy said Oklahoma is nothing but Texas's damn hat. And then the guy from Oklahoma was like, put him up, son, because you ain't talking like that.
It's like that a lot of the time. We'll say the same thing. North Texas is just South Oklahoma, and I mean, I think some Texans that live farther down south would agree to that. But it mostly boils down to the OU-UT rivalry. So you got the University of Oklahoma up in Norman, you got UT down in Austin, and I mean, it's so bad that for our football game, we have to meet in Dallas at what they call a neutral site because it's halfway between each city because it gets violent.
It's great. Yeah, well, you guys start young, man. Like high school football there have stadiums of like big bleacher seats. It's like a big thing. Like I think the Northeast, our college football, they stink. They're like a bunch of nerds. It's like Harvard, BU. You know what I mean? They're not like super good. So as a kid, I never really grew up like rah-rahing like a college sport team. But everybody I've met and my friends that are from the Midwest or the South are like, college is like over the NFL. It's like the biggest deal.
Well, you got to think here in Oklahoma. I mean, up until a few years ago when we got the Oklahoma City Thunder with the NBA, we didn't have any professional teams like any kind of major league. We don't have Major League Baseball. We don't have an NFL team. We didn't have an NBA team until the Thunder came around.
Oh, that makes sense.
So really, college sports is what we had, and since there's no NFL team around here, the closest one would be the Cowboys down in Dallas. That's what we got, and it means a lot to us. And you think the rivalry between like Oklahoma and Texas is crazy. You should see just the craziness between OU and OSU. There's a reason they call it Bedlam. So
that's funny. And who's Roll Tide? Is that Alabama?
that's Alabama.
Okay, I forget which guest it was came on, and he was like a Roll Tide guy, and I was like, what? He's like, you don't know what that means?
No, they're real big into it too. Probably just as much, if not more, than us.
Yeah. Hey, you got to have something to root for, man. We went through Oklahoma. When we went cross country one time, we stopped at a campground in Oklahoma and saw the best political commercial I've ever seen. Where we're in our camper, but we had like we were getting like the UHF stuff, and it must have been a local. I think it was a state senator or something, and it was like, Kathy McGraw is for gay marriage. Then the camera switches to a skeet going up in the sky. Boom! He rocks a shotgun. And he's like, she's for whatever the right wing issue was. This other boom! And every time he shoots a skeet with a shotgun, and me and my wife looked at each other and we're like, this is incredible. It was almost like an SNL skit. It was so good.
It gets a little cringy around here sometimes, but that's the kind of people we deal with. That's the kind of people I deal with on a daily basis. And then you mix like, meth and fentanyl in there too. And then that's the kind of people I'm dealing with. So
yeah, dude. I mean, they are, and everybody has guns down there. Like anytime I went to a training when we were, and the instructor would teach us all over the country, and he gave us some stats to make us, because we were upset about the conviction rate in Massachusetts, and then like the courts and all this stuff. And he was like, have you ever looked up southern or midwestern towns with the same size population of your town and city and seen how many times cops get shot versus here? And we're like, no. And they're like, well, they get shot a lot more because down there, the law, a lot of them have the 3-strike rule, and a lot of them are, the judge sentences the maximum. They don't screw around with the law. In Mass, you can be like a repeat offender and out like that. And he's like, so take it easy when you're complaining, because while you might be frustrated with your court cases, you're also not dodging as many bullets. So I thought that was interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It's a good thing. Like, I'm happy that our prosecutors and our judges and stuff aren't like it is, back east and, on the far west coast and things like that, where you do something, you steal a car, and then you can be out 30 minutes later and go steal another car on like zero bail.
Yeah, it's nuts.
So when we stick people with sentences, they stick. So yeah, there is a lot of I'm not going back. I had a guy just the other day.
That's what you don't want to hear.
Yeah. Well, I had a case the other day where a guy I was dealing with, he had told the victim it was a domestic violence case, and he told the victim This is going to be my third felony, so I'm going to make it worth the felony
Oh,
because they know,
yeah, it's bad, man. I mean, when I was in California, there was a guy who stole, it was like 4 or 5 cars in a day. In a
Mhm.
day or a couple days. And the last one, he seriously injured somebody when he crashed it running from the cops. And then, only then, was the guy sentenced. It was like, or held. It was totally nuts.
I don't understand how guys continue to do the job at all in places like that because I would see that and I would go, "What am I here for?"
Yeah.
You
They're
know,
not. They're
I
leaving in
just
droves.
sure, yeah. I just like to even now, like even though they are leaving in droves, it shocks me that there's anybody that wants to do it because you put in all this work, you write up a report and stuff, and you send it to the DA, and you think, "Oh man, I did something good," and then what? Here's a slap on the wrist. Go do more crime. Like,
Yeah. And it's so much work putting together an investigation and submitting it to court and making sure everything's right. You know what I mean? It's like we meticulously look over the charges and the narratives and then just have it be like, see you later.
yep,
Terrible.
yep.
So
Plus,
Matt,
you know, getting called in on your days off for court appearances and things like that. That's always fun.
yeah, what a waste of time. At least they're paying us for it. William, can you tell us the first time you had a hot call or the first call that got your blood going?
Yeah. So, like I told you, kind of when we talked a little bit before this, I've got kind of two stories to a lot of your answers because I couldn't pick the best one. But I will start with my first story out on patrol, and then I'll backtrack a little bit to another one when I actually wasn't even law enforcement at the time.
Sounds great.
So, okay. So my first one, it was my first week of FTO. I believe it was like maybe a Sunday. It was like the end of my work week. And during our first week of FTO, when you go from phase to phase, you have what's called an observation period. Well, your first one, it's a week-long observation period. So you're riding shotgun, you're watching what your TO does, you're trying to pick up on their stuff. So I was still just a glorified ride-along at this point. But it's the end of the day, end of the work week, 30 minutes till end of shift. And I'm like,
Always.
cool, this has been great. Yeah. We're sitting there in a parking lot talking to another deputy and his trainee and stuff. And all of a sudden there's a tone out. Now you got to understand, we're county, so we are tied in with the larger municipality in the agency. So anytime they get a tone out, it comes across on radio. And you'll sit there for a second, and a lot of the times it's like, oh, you perk up, and then it's like, oh, that's them. That's not us. We're not even going to worry about it. This time, perked up, and then it was for us. And it was just immediately, the call was shots fired in a neighborhood, which was about a mile or two where we were sitting. And two juveniles, one just shooting at houses.
Ugh.
So, yeah, we spin up, we go code 3. I'm riding with a very experienced deputy. So he's just balls to the wall, hammer down.
You
And
got
I'm
your
like,
legs out straight, like, oh.
yeah, I'm like, oh, this is it. Okay. And I'm like, okay, going through my mind, like, there's a gun involved. So, like, as soon as I get out of the car, I need to be guns out on this guy. And, there's going to be 2 suspects. So I got to pick a guy and, like, deal with that guy and let the other 2 people deal with the other guy. And we roll into the neighborhood, and there's immediately 2 juveniles standing kind of in the middle of the road. Don't see a firearm, but as soon as we jump out of the car, we draw down on these guys. I start giving commands to my guy. Thankfully, my guy lays down. I walk over and I put him in cuffs. I'm like, hey, don't move. I start patting him down. And I look up and I see not just my TO, but the other TO and his trainee fighting with this guy. And he is standing up with all 3 of them on his back.
Damn.
Turns out he was on PCP.
Yeah.
And he was armed. but we couldn't see the gun at this point. So they start delivering strikes, and they're fighting this guy. And this whole time, I'm standing there with my guy. And at one point, I start to go over there, and my training officer sees this, and he's like, "No, stop, stay with your guy. Like, I know we're in this whole thing, and it looks like it's a big fight, but we'll handle this. Stay with your guy." So I'm sitting there just watching these guys fight him, and this kid was maybe, I don't know, 5'8", 5'9", and like 125 pounds soaking wet, like really little kid. And he's fighting two grown men and another female deputy that wasn't a pushover. She had done like 6 years in the jail before this, so she's dealt with things. And he is whooping their asses at the
Damn. Is
beginning.
he a kid?
Yeah, he was like 16, 17.
Damn.
At the
That's
time.
dark, man. 16 years old doing PCP. Oh.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So eventually, I think somebody tases him, and like under power, they're able to get him cuffed up. They stand him up, and they're walking him over to the vehicles. We got like EMS en route because anytime we deploy taser, we got to call EMS. And as he's walking, the gun falls out of the bottom of his pants,
There
and
you
it's
go.
like, "There's the gun." Okay. And after we talked to people, apparently he was walking around and shooting in people's front yards and stuff. And it was just really surreal that, it was two, younger kids. And I've just never seen anybody that small fight that hard. And the whole time we were dealing with him after the fact, he kept, I guess it's called cycling, where he would come up and like he'd get really aggressive with us, start spitting at us and stuff. And then he would come back down and be like, "Guys, I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't hurt you," all this other stuff. And he did this for probably, I don't know, like an hour and a half after we got him in the back of the car. And we took him to the jail, and he just kept going. I was just like, "Man, that's wild."
Yeah.
And then, 3 weeks later, we responded to the same house for an overdose, a DOA, and it turned out it was like a trap house. So, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, man. That's a good first one, man. Especially you just get to see people at their worst and what they're capable of. Like you're like, this is now my life. So did that excite you, or did it make you think, oh man, this is real. I gotta be careful out here.
Well, I had already. This is kind of why I'm going to have a second story on this. I had that moment a long time ago before I was even law enforcement. I mean, like, yeah, it was like, oh, I'm out on patrol now, and this is the kind of stuff I'm going to be dealing with for at least the next 4 months. So
Right.
it excited me a little bit, but it was also like, well, watch out for scrawny little kids, because if they're on PCP, they can fight.
Yeah.
But my first like, oh my gosh, I can't believe like this is a real moment. It happened when I was still working security at the Oklahoma City National Memorial. Take you all the way back to the summer of 2020.
Can you
During all
before you tell
the
the story, William? Can you set that up a little bit of what your job was and your authority and what that's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum, it is a memorial and museum all about the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. And we have a very beautiful outside memorial, and then there is a building that was directly across from the Murrah building that actually survived the blast, and that has been turned into a museum.
Okay.
And so, if anybody's ever been to like the 9/11 museum or anything like that, it's very similar to that. In fact, I think they came to our museum to get ideas and stuff for the 9/11 museum. Um, but if you've ever been to anything like that, it's very similar to that, just focused on the 1995 bombing.
Okay.
And so I was the lieutenant over the security detail there. I had like 4 or 5 guys underneath me, and we just worked security there 24/7, 365 days a year, um, downtown Oklahoma City. So you're dealing with not only the thousands of people that come through every week to visit the museum and memorial, which are generally, very chill people.
Yep.
You also get, uh, you know, street people and people that are just committing crimes in the area and stuff coming through. And the grounds are open 24/7. So really anybody can come on at any time. So, and you got to keep, our job was essentially to protect our visitors and then protect the site itself, because to a lot of people, myself included, that's hallowed ground. So
Right.
that's essentially what we did.
And for
Um,
in Oklahoma, as security, do you have any kind of? Is there some kind of commission for that, or just on the property you were what everybody thinks of security? That's just basically it.
yeah, I mean, yes and no. So in the state of Oklahoma, you do have to go through certain classes that are put on by CLEAT, which is our version of POST. It's the Council on Law Enforcement Education and Training. Um, so even as security, you have to go through these basic classes. You have to go through like 2 classes to be an unarmed security officer, and then you have to take a firearms course as well to be a armed security officer. And then you don't have any specific arrest powers other than what's kind of already in our state laws is what I guess people would call citizens arrest. But since you're carrying handcuffs and you have, handcuffing techniques and use of force and things like that, you're a little more able to do that other than your average citizen. So 90% of the time, if we had somebody that was like combative or somebody that we needed to hook up, we'd detain them and then we'd take them maybe into our office or just sit them down right there. And then we would wait for Oklahoma City PD to come and transport. And we have a great relationship with OCPD. In fact, our director of security was a former OCPD major. So anytime we called them out, it was usually no questions asked. It was, all right, cool. You hooked them up. We'll do the report, take them in, stuff like that.
Sounds like a
So
great job.
that's how
You take them and do
it
the
was.
report.
It was
Thank you.
really nice. But yeah, well, it was really great because I kind of got to double not only as security, but I got to be an ambassador for the site. So the grounds are open 24/7. The museum's only open like 9 to 5, like Monday through Saturday, and then like Sunday it's open like noon to 5. So when there's none of the museum staff there, you're the only one on grounds. And so you're going to have people asking you questions. You're going to meet people from all over the world. I mean, heck, I've met celebrities that have just showed up in the middle of the night. Like they came out because they wanted to see the grounds and they didn't want anybody to, mob them because they're a celebrity.
Interesting.
And, it's really weird when you're walking around out there and you're like, are you Pink? Are you Danny Trejo? And and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
they are. Kevin Costner, so
Bizarre.
I've met, yeah, and it was a really great job. And the only reason I left it was to go into law enforcement.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. You get a
So
little taste of it and you're like, I'm going to go wide open.
yeah, it was really enjoyable. And so back to my pre-police, this is real moment. It was summer of 2020. The George Floyd riots were going on and everything. And
Yep.
I don't think any part of the country really got away from that. Like any major city had that. And it was, I call it like recreational outrage, it seemed to be.
Yeah.
Well, they had this large gathering at a spot like across I-35, like a few miles away. And then at the end of this gathering, all these people were going to march towards the police station and the county court or the county jail in Oklahoma City. Well, the memorial, you got to remember, it was the site of a federal building. So it's down there near all those buildings. It's about 2 blocks. And it was directly on the route from where they were coming from. So all overtime was approved. They called everybody in, and they were like, we don't know what's going to happen, but based off what we've seen, in other parts of the country, this could get violent. And, we were hoping that, hey, this is hallowed ground. Oklahomans know this. Um, you know, Hopefully it'll be okay. But what I didn't know at the time was how many people were just traveling from city to city to participate in these riots.
Right.
I mean, 90% of the people I dealt with, I hooked one guy up and I started getting his information, and he was from Houston. And I was like,
Texas guy, of
why are
course.
you? And I was like, yeah, yeah. I was like, why are you here? What do you even know what this building is? And at one point he was like, oh man, I thought this was the police station. I'm like, no. You ask any Oklahoman what this place is, and they can tell you. So we were directly on this route, and these people were passing by on their way, and OCPD came out, and we went out, and we essentially formed a barrier around the memorial, because while we were still in our relaxed state, people started coming by and smashing out windows and throwing rocks at our monitors. And at one point, I found myself surrounded by like 15 angry rioters. And I think it was in that moment that I was like, oh, this is real.
Yeah, that's bad.
You're standing there and you pull out your baton and you're like, all right, it's go time. And, thankfully, about 10 seconds after that, OCPD came in, running Code 3 and jumped out in all their riot gear, and we were kind of able to disperse people. But as the night went on, I found myself walking around the grounds, with a shotgun while they're deploying CS gas and bean bags and rubber bullets and stuff on these people on the streets. There's helicopters flying everywhere. I was like, man, I feel like I'm in downtown Baghdad. Like, this is ridiculous. This does not feel like the United States,
Yeah.
let alone at the site of something that we're all supposed to be against, terrorism, So I think that was my first moment of, this is what I'm going into full time.
Yeah, man, that's freaky. Especially people get in that that fervor where they're like, they normally wouldn't act like this, but they got hundreds or thousands of people with them that are acting like that, and it kind of builds on itself. And yet we can't label those people, all that rioting that went on. Those are not domestic terrorists. They're just letting off some steam,
They were mostly peaceful protests while stuff's on fire behind me, So.
That was the best news clip ever to be on television. He's like in front of a burning Kmart. He's like, this is oh man. Yeah, that's scary, brother. I'm glad you made it out of there. Did you guys have like turtle suits to wear and all that stuff, or just your uniform?
Oh, not us. I just had my uniform. I mean, OCPD rolled in wearing all their stuff, but I had I had my external vest on and like standard duty belt loadout, and then I slung a shotgun just in case. Oklahoma security can't use rifles, so I was like, all right, 870 it is.
Yeah, hey, a 1 ounce slug will do a lot more damage than a rifle round at that range.
Yeah, well, and it's funny. Before the funny thing is, they waited until sundown. Like, they started their march at sundown so they could get to the police station and the county jail just as the sun went down. And all the agencies around there were getting ready for it. And the way the memorial is set up, so you have the memorial itself, and then off to maybe the northwest is the new federal building, which has been built after the Murrah building was destroyed. And then directly south of the memorial is the federal courthouse. So you had Federal Protective Service, U.S. Marshals, the ATF, all the Fed boys were running around. And at one point, I saw a U.S. Marshal walking out of their storage room that they have in like the parking garage on the south side of the memorial, and he's just carrying a handful of tear gas canisters. And, I jokingly said, like, hey, can we get some of those? And he was like, if you got a 40 millimeter grenade launcher, absolutely. And I was like, fresh out.
That's awesome. Carrying a big pile of tear gas, a big smile on his face, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah, man. William, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre thing you've dealt with?
Yeah, once again, I've got two stories with this, so I'll let you pick which one I tell first. So you either have DUI granny or the drug dealer that decided to flag down a deputy.
Just do them in order. DUI granny. I like the sounds of that.
DUI granny. Okay. So we get a call. Let me preface this by saying typically vehicle accidents, my agency does not work. Unless there's some kind of criminal thing involved, we'll call the Oklahoma Highway Patrol and have them come out and work the crash. I don't know why we do things that way, but that's just how we do things. So we get called out to a vehicle accident, and at the time they believed there was a criminal element to it. And let me say, with the exception of DUI, if it's DUI crash or something like that, I believe OHP will still go ahead and handle it. But if there's like, DUI with injury or malicious injury to property, anything like that, if they harm somebody or property, in the midst of the crash or the DUI, then we'll go out and work it. So the call comes out as a DUI with property damage. We roll out, and there is this minivan that has slammed into the side of this old, like straight up and down brick house. And the vehicle has almost punched all the way through the brick into this house.
She went way off
Like
the road.
You can tell. Yeah, you can tell. Well, there's a reason for that. So you can tell at some point this whole structure is going to collapse. And I walk past the van, and in the back of the van, I see like a 30 pack of whether, I don't know, maybe it was like Coors Light or something like that. And I'm like, okay, cool, DUI. And I'm like, where's our suspect? And fire tells me, so you see the house behind this building? That's actually her house. So she actually owned the building that she slammed into and then lived in the house behind it. So immediately we're like, well, if that's her property, no crime. But I'm going to go talk to this woman anyway. So I go into the house, and immediately when I get into the house, on every single surface in this house, the floors, the tables, the chairs, there are empty Coors Light cans. It looked like a Coors Light commercial. It was ridiculous.
Bizarre.
This woman, I don't know how she was still alive after drinking this much, because she was probably early 80s and still drinking this much and still driving and drinking while driving. And so I start trying to talk to this woman. And while I am trying to talk to her, she reaches into her little walker, into a cooler that is attached to her walker, and pulls out a cold one and cracks it while I'm talking to her. And I'm like, ma'am, let's not do this. And she's like, oh, why can't I drink? I'm like, well, because you're suspected of DUI and possibly property damage, ma'am. I wouldn't drink anymore if I were you. I was like, we're going to sit here and wait until OHP gets here. They're going to work it, but I'm going to go ahead and get some information from you. She's like, oh, well, okay. And she's kind of getting sideways with me at this moment. And so she had a caretaker there, like a neighbor or somebody looked after her, and they were like, I'll take the beer. So they walk out and take the beer, and I'm like, okay, cool. I got to step outside to go give my information to OHP when they get here. Step out, we come back in, and she has another one, cold and cracked, and she's sitting there just drinking away. And I'm like, well,
you don't tell me
OHP,
what to do.
Exactly. It was just like that. And I'm like, well, OHP, have fun. I'm 10-8. So that one was very fun, and I got quite a laugh out of that one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So the other one, this is when it was, I think, my second go around of FTO when I came back after my divorce. I'm at the office. It's the very beginning of the day. I think after squad meeting, one unit had gone out, and she was already headed down the highway. and the rest of us were kind of hanging out and talking. I was letting the big boys talk, so I kind of went out to the car like a good rookie. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the radio traffic, and she's like, Baker, whatever, vehicle assist, which, okay, first thing in the morning, the vehicle assist, something very simple. She said, I got this guy flagging me down. And I'm still listening to the radio traffic, and she's calling out the tag. And the return she gets is like a 1975 Camaro. And the last time that the tag was registered was in like 1979 or something like that. So immediately I'm like, that's weird.
Yeah.
I sit around and I wait a few seconds, and all of a sudden I hear coming over the radio screaming, hey, I've got one fighting. And so we jump in our cars and we run code 3, and she's only about a mile and a half down the road. We pull up, and this dude is all over, pull him off, get him hooked up. And, we asked her, we were like, what happened? And she said, well, he flagged me down. I ran his tag. Obviously, this car is not a 1975 Camaro. And so I went up to talk to him about it. And as soon as I went up to talk to him about it, the fight was on.
Weird.
And I was like, that's interesting. Okay. And so then we searched the vehicle, and it's just drug central. We found Xanax, we found fentanyl, we found ketamine mixed with fentanyl, a bunch of weed, just, whatever the heart desires this guy had. And he
it
had
all.
like, five or six cell phones. He had a dildo in the door for some reason. I don't know. It
just for good measure.
Yeah, assault dildo in the passenger door. And so finally we seize all the evidence, and we take it, go to get it booked, and we're looking at the tag, and we're like, what is up with this tag? Why is it, because they ran the VIN to the car, and the tag that belongs to the car came back valid and matching that vehicle and matching his name. So
What?
It's like, right. So this guy has a valid tag, but it's not on his vehicle, and he decided to put another tag on the vehicle? What?
So he's using his own product too much.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on. So we start looking at the tag, and in Oklahoma, we have like these light blue tags with black lettering. Horrible for trying to read unless you're more than like less than a car lengths behind them.
Yeah, I bet.
But you're looking at it, and you're like, has he altered it in any way? And if you didn't get, like literally like 6 inches from this thing, you couldn't tell. But he had taken, maybe it was like, I think it was a D, and he had taken a little strip of black electric tape and put it on there and turned it into a B. And so that's what made it come back to this 75 Camaro. And the only thing we could figure out why he did this is because he was trying to avoid like tolls.
Oh, okay.
And that was the only reason she even like approached him to make contact with him in that kind of like capacity in the first place. So if he hadn't have done that, it probably would have been, I'll see you later. Because I think he was asking her to jump his car or something like that. It would have been, hey, we can't do that. Sorry, have a nice day.
Right.
But because he wanted to avoid tolls, it turned into a fight, lights and sirens, tons of drugs seized, and him going to jail for a very long time.
Stupid. It's like the guy going 75 in a 40 who's got a warrant. You pull him over and you're like,
yeah,
no one ever would have known, dummy. What are you doing?
Yeah. Or the person that you stop for a minor traffic infraction, and they decide to amp it up and I know my rights you until you pull them out of the car and arrest them and take them to jail for obstruction.
Right.
Because I've had that happen a couple of times too with like sovereign citizens and stuff.
I'm a free man traveling. You hear those words, you're like, oh.
Well,
great.
We've got an interesting one. So because Oklahoma, according to McGirt, which is case law, half of the state is now an Indian reservation. But we have all been cross-commissioned by the tribes to enforce state and tribal law anywhere within these lands, right? So I've had a guy where I went to stop a car and it was weird. It was like there was a car and then there was a truck behind the car and the target vehicle was the car in front. So we come up to a stop sign and I try to lights and siren my way around the truck to go after the car. But every time I try to go around it, this guy accelerates.
Hmm.
And anytime he accelerates, like I'm trying to go by, he accelerates and I can't get to this car. Well, finally I get around him and I stop the car. He pulls in behind me and jumps out and starts yelling all this. She's native. You can't stop her. You can. It was the lady's husband. And it turned into him going to jail for obstruction over like her tag being out of date or something. So
Ridiculous. Love
it
it.
happens all the time.
Yep. Job security. The stupidity out there.
Yes.
William, can you tell us your most intense or terrifying call you've dealt with?
Yeah, absolutely. So once again, I got two stories. I'm very indecisive. Everything is cool to me. So um, my first one was before I even went out to FTO. I had just kind of gotten over to the courthouse. And in my city where the courthouse is, there is also a very large convention center kind of adjacent to it. And we're sitting there getting ready for squad brief. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning. And one of our deputies runs in and she's like, hey, city just ended a pursuit over at the Cox building, armed murder suspect who just took off inside of the Cox building and is now a barricaded subject.
Whoops.
So we're like, okay, everybody runs out to their cars and grabs their rifles, and you just see like this stream of 30 deputies walking across like the plaza to the Cox Center. And we get over there and we walk inside, and it's just like, oh man, how are we going to find this guy? And it became even more scary when we found out he was a security guard that worked at the
Ooh.
convention center,
Yeah.
had keys to everything, and also had a radio to where he could monitor communications and stuff like that.
It's no
So I'm
bueno.
like, okay, this is reverse Die Hard. That's
Yeah.
exactly what this is. And so we start getting with city and trying to formulate a plan, and they decide, all right, he's barricaded, he's not an active shooter or anything like that. We're going to set up a perimeter, hold for SWAT. So they send us out to the perimeter, and I'm holding the door, and they send SWAT inside. And at one point, the door swings open, and all I see is a muzzle come out.
Ooh.
And I don't hear sheriff's office, I don't hear police, nothing. I just see a muzzle peek out of the door, and I'm immediately just like, oh boy, here we go. Well, thankfully, I ID'd my target, and it was our SWAT guys. And
Oh.
The guy who came out of the door turned to me and goes, hey, Long, follow me back in. We don't have enough people to clear this place. Come clear this place with us. I'm like, me? Rookie me? I was like, I don't have a rifle. I have El Pistola. I can't and he's like,
Right.
no, come on. He was like, I've seen you do active shooter training. Come with us. And so I ended up going in with SWAT and clearing this entire massive convention hall.
That's
And
intense.
eventually, yeah, and it was scary because we had no idea where the guy was. He had actually just killed his father the night before. And then I guess when City tried to make a traffic stop on his vehicle, he took off on him and then ran into the convention center. And you're thinking, this guy has access to the whole building. He's
Yeah.
armed. He knows where everything is. And, who knows if this guy has any kind of training or anything like that. Some of these security guys, I mean, they're like the epitome of Barney Fife, but some of these guys, they're combat veterans that came back and just decided to work security. So
Yeah.
what kind of guy is this? Who are we dealing with? Is he going to sit in a spot and quietly pick people off
Right.
or what? It ended up being okay. He eventually, they contacted him on I guess, the in-house radio system. And as we were clearing the building, they were able to talk him down and talk him out. We took him into custody, and it was okay. But the pucker factor was at 100% going into that building.
Yeah, absolutely, man. How exhausted were you after that?
I was pretty tired. I was pretty tired because I probably spent maybe, I don't know, an hour just sitting on the perimeter like this. And
Yeah.
thankfully, I found like a rail to lean on. And of course, the news is like right at my 5 o'clock and has a perfect shot of me and my partner holding this door. And I'm like, oh, well, I can't do anything stupid or I'm going to get in trouble.
Your shoulders are burning.
Funny story. I actually got called into the office afterwards because I guess somebody was watching the news footage and had texted one of my supervisors, hey, one of your deputies is on his phone while he's supposed to be holding the area. And they called me and they were like, so we heard you were on your phone. I was like, what are you talking about? And they showed me the news clip. And what it was I had pulled my radio out of its holder and I was setting it to the right mutual aid channel that us and city and state and everybody else had gotten on for this thing.
Yeah.
And so that was funny in and of itself. But by the end of it, I was gassed.
I bet,
I was
man.
tired.
High stress.
And then had to go work a full day at the courthouse after that.
You were like, I just want to sit down. I want to lie down.
Yeah. I was like, I'm sweaty. I'm tired. Can I go home and take a shower? Nope, go to court. Have fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was my first one. And then since I have been to FTO and gotten a little bit under my belt, maybe if that had happened to me now, it wouldn't have stuck in my mind as much.
Yeah, when you're new, I mean, everything is every first thing you do is more intense, and that is a legit intense scenario. So it's like a multiplier,
Yeah. So this next one, I would say now, if I had to pick now, this would now be my most intense. So every year we have a county fair, and for that fair, we are the only law enforcement because it is on county property. City doesn't have anything to do with it. State doesn't have anything to do with it. And imagine a county fair in a major metropolitan area where there is a high level of crime. So it is all hands on deck. Everybody's out there. We're walking in groups of no less than like 3 or 4 people. Just because so many people come in with guns. There's a lot of beef. The gangs come out and like to settle their beef at the fair.
Great.
So I'm working the fair, and we have rule number 1 of the fair is don't run. Unless you are dealing with a life or death situation, do not run, because if people see cops running, it's going to start some kind of mass hysteria. That's their biggest fear. So I'm walking down the midway, just chilling with my buddies, probably eating like a turkey leg or something. I don't know. Having a good time, just chilling.
Yeah.
And comes across the radio, hey, we just spotted a juvenile male displaying a firearm. He saw me, saw him, and he took off from me. He's headed in this direction. And I listen, I'm like, oh, he's headed right towards us. So turkey leg's gone. I'm looking for our suspect, and I'm like, okay, he's armed. And I see these 2 juveniles, and, there's a bunch of kids out there running around being stupid. So these 2 kids, I see them running towards me, and I go, hey, stop. And just about the time I say stop, I realize that they're probably not who we're looking for. Another kid cuts behind them and is in a dead sprint. And I'm like, there's the guy. So I take off running after him, and we cut a corner and come around. My corporal comes out of nowhere and runs past me. He's a former Marine, and is just an absolute unit of a dude. Comes by me and tackles this dude, and I ended up jumping into the fight, and immediately this guy's hand goes right to his waistband. And he's going for his gun at this point. And so I'm on top of him, directly on his back. My corporal's on his left and has his left hand and is giving him commands, hey, get your hand away from there, get your hand away from there. And I'm trying to crank his arm back. But the way we are, his hand is on the gun, like flat. And then his body's on top of it, and then my body's on top of him. So unless we crank his arm out, it's not coming out unless he either bridges up or decides to pull that gun. So I'm like, well, how do I get his hand out of there? And I start thinking, going through scenarios really fast in my head, and my brain goes back to an incident I had seen on live PD. Actually, it came from my state as well. These two Tulsa police officers, same deal. They pulled the guy out of the car and started fighting him on the ground. He had gotten purchase on the gun in his waistband, and they start doing all these, jujitsu moves and stuff. And then I remember them saying they had to actually like pry his fingers away from the gun. So I'm like, okay, if I can get my hand in between his hand and the gun, I can get purchase on it before he can.
Right.
And in my head, I'm like, okay, if I can't get purchase on this gun, I guess the next thing I'm going to do is draw my firearm and put it at the back of his head and start giving commands. I don't know what else to do in this situation.
Right.
So I shoot my hand down, and I am able to kind of weasel it in between his hand and the gun. And I grab a hold of this pistol, and as hard as I can, I just yank it out and get it away from him. I get up, disengage. Other deputies come in, and they cuff him up and stuff. And I'm sitting there, and I go and I clear the weapon, and I'm just like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like I just okay. This guy had a gun. He had a hand on the gun, and that could have gone a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, because that's where your mind goes. He wants the gun to kill me, to kill us.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking too. I was like, this guy's an idiot for trying to shoot his way out of 100 deputies surrounding him. But people do dumb stuff, and we got the gun away. And afterwards, I was thinking about it. I was like, that could have gone 2 or 3 different ways. He gets it out and shoots one of us. We end up having to shoot him. Or while I was, fumbling around for that gun, what if it had a negligently discharged or something?
Yeah, someone's finger slips in there.
Shot both of us. But it was the best plan I had at the moment. So.
Yeah, sometimes that's all you got, man. Thank goodness it worked out. If you shot his balls off, that wouldn't have been a big loss anyways, but you don't want to shoot yourself.
Well, you say that, but when there's thousands of people around at the fair with video cameras
eating turkey legs,
it seems like anytime we get into any kind of public altercation with people out there, whether we're right or not, it always ends up on the news, and we're always wrong. Period. No matter what.
Like the radio cell phone thing. Thanks for the back. Thanks for assuming the worst about me. Perfect. Yep, that's what we're dealing with. Hey, do you have a heartwarming story? Something to tickle the heartstrings for these people?
I do, and it ties into what I'm doing now. I guess I had kind of said that I am back at the courthouse. I have now been assigned to our felony domestic violence docket, and I am slowly trying to get that transitioned into a felony domestic violence unit that operates out of the courthouse, because while we're at the courthouse, we're able to talk to all the victim advocates, the DAs, all the other agencies. It's just a perfect nexus.
Sure.
And Oklahoma is fighting with another state for number 1 in domestic violence. Every year we go back and forth.
Oof.
And my county is number 1 in the state for domestic violence. So ipso facto, my county is number 1 in the nation for domestic violence. DV has always been something close to my heart. I've had a lot of friends, family, and even um, people I've been in relationships with that have been victims
Mm.
of domestic violence. And, a lot of cops don't want to deal with it or don't. There's only so much patrol can do, you know?
Yeah, because you
So
show up to
I was,
a fight that from the nexus of the problem has been going on 20 years, and you show up in 5 minutes, you got to figure it out. So it's like everybody's
yeah,
mad at you. It's super dangerous. Half the time, the girl's mad at you when you arrest the guy, even though he was beating her. So it's like there's no, it never feels
yes.
good.
It never works out. So a lot of people shy away from this. I'm going headfirst into it.
Good for you.
Um, I think I've got funding figured out through grants. If anybody else out there listening knows of any grants that I could apply for this, please, holler at me, holler at Steve, and he can get a hold of me.
Absolutely.
Um, more money would be great because I want to take this whole presentation, go to the sheriff, and be like, hey, we've already got everything figured out. We know who's going to be in it. We know what we're going to do, and we have the funding for it. All we need is you to say, okay.
He'll
So,
like that. If you got the money, the boss always likes that.
right. And I think we found enough funding, but, a little more doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
Uh, so, my most recent thing, like I said, I've been working with the DAs and victim advocates and things like that. I had a friend of mine that came to me and said, hey, um, I have this other best friend that's been experiencing domestic violence. It's been an ongoing thing, but she doesn't want to report it yet. She doesn't want me to tell you her name. I'm not gonna betray her trust, anything like that. I'm like, okay. I was like, when she's ready to talk, have her holler at me.
Sure.
And a couple weeks go by, and then I get another phone call, and they're like, hey, um, it got bad. She ended up calling the police. He got arrested, but he threatened her, and she was so afraid of his threat that she went and actively bonded him out.
Mm.
I was like, okay. And she said they're living in the same house. This violence goes on every night. And I was like, well, if he was bonded out, surely there's some kind of no contact order in place that the court put out. And if they're living in the same place, he's violated that no contact order. I was like, ask her, if he was in jail, would she promise not to bail him out again and to cooperate with law enforcement and the DAs to get this guy prosecuted and to get him away from her and her children? And I guess she talked to her and she came back with yeah, I messed up. I shouldn't have bailed him out. I just want him gone. I'm tired of being trapped in my own house. Like he would park behind her or he would physically keep her in the house, things like
Ugh.
that.
Jeez.
Threatened to kill her dog. He actually threatened to kill her and dump her body in her child's room. Just a stand-up guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude.
So I start talking with the DAs and stuff, and I'm like, hey, if I can catch this guy, violating this no contact order, um, can I get a warrant put out? And they were like, yeah, we'll talk to the judge. We'll make it happen. I'm like, cool. So I find out when this guy's coming home, and I just do like a little drive-by, like right when he comes home. I catch him going into his driveway, going into the garage. I run the tag. It comes back to him. I uh, get a little bit of video of him and our victim out in the front yard, and she's like actively talking with him about the domestic violence, like showing bruises and things like that. And I'm like, cool. So I write up an affidavit. I send it to the DA's office on like a Friday, or no, it was a Thursday. Um, and on Friday, she decides that she's had enough of this. She doesn't want to wait. She doesn't want to wait for us. She doesn't want to wait for the warrant. And she's like, I'm ready to get an emergency protective order. And in our state, it doesn't have to be the county or a process server or anybody like that that serves an emergency protective order. Any law enforcement agency can actually do that.
Yeah.
So I get with the municipality that she's in, and I'm like, um, I actually drove down there because they were doing a well-being check on her, and she wasn't at the house, but I knew where she was. And so I go down there and link up with the officers that were doing the wellness check. And when I pull up, he's like, I'm actually on the phone with her right now. I was like, tell her you're with me and tell her to come over here. And so he relays that he's with me, and immediately she like changes her attitude and she's like, I'm on my way.
Great.
And he comes over. Um, I kind of talk the municipal officers through how like the EPO works and stuff like that. We go back to the station. She files another report because he had just abused her again. Um, and I get her and find her a safe place to go. It's our mutual friend's house, and she stays with her. Um, all this while, they're trying to get this EPO served all weekend, but he's just holed up in the house. He won't answer the door. He's
Yeah.
not going anywhere. And I gave him his vehicle and stuff, and they're sitting at his house waiting for him to come out, and he never comes out. And so Monday finally rolls around. I get a call from the DA, and he like we talked to the judge, showed her that he violated the no contact order, and she can't revoke his bond when he's not present. But what she can do is raise his bond to $5 million and issue a warrant for his arrest.
Beautiful.
So yeah, so his bond gets set at $5 million. Warrant comes out. I call the municipality and I'm like, hey, do you guys, want to go out on a $5 million bond warrant? And they're like, absolutely. So they call in all their SWAT guys and their TAC team. The victim comes out and actually gives them the keys to the house and is like, hey, I give you permission. That's my house. Go get it. So
Perfect.
they go in and get this guy. I'm kind of sitting outside as like an observer. Uh, they drag him out and haul him off to jail. Well, finally, she comes back and to the house, and me and the municipal sergeant had looked at the house and stuff, and he had said that he had killed her animals and he had trashed her house and just all this different stuff. Well, we went around and looked, and everything seemed like it was okay. So we were able to tell her, hey, your house is fine, your animals are fine. He's going to jail unless he has a friend that has $5 million cash. He's not getting out, and they're going to prosecute this to the fullest extent of the law. There's not going to be any deals. There's not going to be anything like that. And as I'm walking away, she just stops me and she's like, "Hey, William," and I'm just like, "Yeah." She's like, "Thank you for giving me my life back." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, thank you." Like I did not expect that.
Yeah. That's
And
beautiful, man.
and when that hit me, I was like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do all the time. I
Yeah.
want to help these people, anybody, not just female victims, but anybody that's been victimized by someone they love and they trust, and help them get their lives back while also giving them justice and putting these people that would do harm to the people that they supposedly love and care about, putting them in prison for a very long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, I love
So
that story.
that's my new mission.
Yeah, good for you, man. I love that. That's great. And it does feel good when you deal with a domestic situation. You take the perpetrator out of the house and the victim finally wants to help themselves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because and they have their reasons and they go over it, I'm sure, in your academy like they did mine. Because people love to look at the victim and go, well, that's what she gets. She had all these opportunities, but you got to understand, number one, there's a psychological component of it that we're all could be prey to, especially if you're the weaker in the relationship. You're the weaker in physical stature, and financially, and you have kids, and he's the breadwinner, and there's and maybe you grew up with abuse, so you're kind of used to it, and then it gets ratcheted up so high you don't even realize that he's punitively. We had one where a guy was punitively spanking her every day in front of her daughter, not like playfully, like here's the things you did wrong today. Now it's your paddling, and it goes on and on, and it's so sad, but. They're not the ones to blame. They're trapped, like people don't see it, but it's like an invisible cell. So man, that's beautiful that you're doing that, man. I love it. That's great.
That is, that's something I've been looking into a lot lately. Like I mentioned, a couple girls that I have dated have been victims of domestic violence, and I've had even one leave me to go back to her abuser. And I was like, and so I've taken the time a lot lately to read books on the psychology of it and get into the minds. I'm reading a book right now called Why They Stay.
Yeah.
And it kind of covers everything. And it's everything you just said plus more.
Dark stuff, right?
It's very dark, and it's very, it was originally very confusing. But the more I read about it, the more I'm like, okay, in a weird, twisted way, that makes a lot of sense. These people that get so used to it that they're like, oh, this is love. This is normal.
Yeah.
This means he cares.
Yeah, man.
And they can't see past it.
They got to break. I mean, it's, they got to, like they say, they got to break that cycle. They got to get out. So it sounds like you're going to be the guy to help them do it, man. That's great. That's going to be very rewarding and hard.
That's what I'm going to try. And it's not just me. I am a very small part. Here's the thing. All the pieces are already there. There is, a domestic violence unit within the DA's office, and that's all they handle. We have several organizations, advocacy groups that help and work with these people. We have a court system, a specialty court that is dedicated solely to domestic violence. The only thing we're missing is a law enforcement element to go out there and make first contact and investigate these crimes and go after these people that have outstanding DV warrants. And that's the role I'm trying to fill.
Yeah, man. Good for you. I love it. You got to keep me updated on it. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. William, one last question for you. We're well over an hour here, so I'm going to let you go soon. I appreciate your time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, an hour and 12 so far. Advice to new police officers, people looking to get into it. What would you tell them from your perspective?
Well, one, don't give up. And I say that, everybody's said that, don't give up. I applied to so many law enforcement agencies, and it wasn't until I went out and I got certified on my own that I was picked up. So if you have that availability in your state to go to like a community college or a university or something,
like a self-sponsorship,
and get your certification without having a sponsorship from an agency, do that, because that will make you way more appealing. I can't tell you how many times I applied for a place and, like, in my opinion, and maybe even other people's opinion, there were better candidates than the guy that got hired. But the guy that got hired was already certified, and they didn't have to pay to send him.
It's about the dollar bill.
And in addition to that, if you do want to get into law enforcement, learn about it, as much about it as you can before going into it. Work a law enforcement adjacent job, whether it's, private investigations or security or bail enforcement, process serving, anything like that. And watch YouTube and listen to podcasts about, anything that you're interested in law enforcement. There is YouTube videos about it, and there are podcasts about it. And that will help you set you up and kind of get you into that mentality and mindset before you even go to the academy.
Heck yeah. Good advice, brother. Hey, man, I'm glad we finally got this done. It was an honor to have you, William.
Me too. And I look forward to a few years down the road coming back. I would like to call this episode kind of the story so far.
Yeah, it's great. I'm getting you young, so I can just keep tapping that well every couple of years, man. It's perfect. Hey, I'm going to do the, is there anywhere, say somebody wanted to reach out to you or or had a question or something like that, do you want them to go through me, or would you want to put an email out there?
I'd have them reach out to you, and then you can just come to me for it. Typically when I give out my card and stuff, it's got my work email, but those are people I'm meeting face to face.
Right.
I don't know if I want my work email out there in the big blue yonder. So if you want to get a hold of me, get a hold of Steve, and he'll text me.
I don't blame you. A lot of guys do that, and I get all kinds of emails from like producers and stuff like, "Hey, you had so and so on about that murder or that missing person. We're doing a documentary for so and so, and we can't get a hold of them." So I'll have to reach out to the cop and be like, and sometimes the cop's like, "Nah, I'm all set. Like I'm interested in being on a documentary." So I'm like, okay, but yeah, so people reach out all the time, but you can do that, steve@thingspolicec.com. Reach out to me, and I can get a hold of William. I'll do the vetting. I'll do your background, make sure you're legit.
Appreciate it.
All right, brother. Can you hang on for like 2 minutes when I do the outro?
Absolutely.
All right. The great William James Long, ladies and gentlemen. Fantastic interview, great conversation. Thank you to him for coming on. Thank you to all the rating and reviewing that's been going on, guys. I truly appreciate it. 5 stars if you can. And if you really love the show and you've heard all the episodes and you find some value with them, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe to the Patreon. The link is in the show notes. You can go there, and there's 2 different levels you can choose and do that. I love it. Keeps the boat afloat. With that being said, it's that time of the show when I thank the Patreon sergeants, and who I'm talking about is the powerful Andy Biggs, Greg Gadboy, the great Adam Mihal, Chris June, Gary Steiner, Jake Pinito, John Shoemaker, the great Lauren Stimson, everybody, handsome Lane Campbell, Seth Wright, everyone, James Rose, ladies and gentlemen, Tony Fahey, you know him, the great Ben Peters, Jason Lau, Sasha McNabb, Scott Minkler, everybody, the great Tammy Walsh, holding it down at dispatch, the one and only, magnificent William James Long. That's Deputy William James Long to you. Thank you very much. Sean Clifford, everyone. Dennis Carrasquillo, Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles. Check out his podcast. George Tessier, I'll see you at church, brother. Scott Young, everybody. The great Thomas Connell. Dan Carlson from Burley Boards, amazing woodworker. Check him out. Doug and Kelly Newman, love you guys. See you at church. The great Dave Ellman, everyone. Elliot Sykes. Richard Tolles, keep on trucking, brother. Christian, because that's all he wanted me to say. Jace Crow, everyone. Brad Thompson, Kyle Roberts, Zach Haney, the great Nancy Hammond, Clark LaCuff, Adam McMahon, Ossifer, Andy, everyone. The great Sheriff Ronald Long, Zachary Pleat, the great Bentley Barnett, Jason Labrie, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only, the J.A. family, and the great Jessica King. That's the list. That's the Patreon sergeants. Love you guys. Thank you for your continued support. You keep things going here. You pay the bills, and I love that. With all that said, I will see you guys next week.